Okay, so good morning. Thank you very much, Elsa. And I'm just conscious as well that the title of my presentation is STEMifying Science. So again, kind of perhaps following on from our previous two presenters who have really showcased really well the benefit of contextual-based integrated science and the value for the learners. I'm kind of looking at it from a perspective as a science educator, and my role in Immaculate College in Ireland is a teacher educator, and we teach pre-service primary teachers. So we teach about 40% of the primary teachers in Ireland. So we have very large cohorts, about 400 to 500 students, pre-service teachers per year. And the primary teachers, which would be the elementary teachers in Ireland, are classroom teachers. So they're generalists. They teach like 12, 13 subjects across the primary school curriculum, and science is just one of the subjects that they're prepared to teach. So with the integration of science within STEM, it's important for me as a science educator to look at their preparedness to teach science and their content and pedagogical development to help them, so that the core essence of science isn't lost within the broader integration. So I don't mean to disregard the integration of STEM in my view in today's session. Absolutely, that's where we're moving towards, and that's where a lot of our policy has developed in Ireland in recent years. But it's important that we just look at the primary teachers and their unique role. And then in Ireland, of course, as it has internationally, over the last 10 years, we've had a lot of development in our STEM education. So in terms of our review, implementation plans, policy statement, and all of this recent developments has been informed by international research studies also. It has led towards the most recent development, which was just last year, a new draft integrated curriculum for science, technology and engineering at primary level. So this really is upcoming with my students that I'm teaching the second year pre-service teachers at the moment, and it's preparing them for a curriculum that isn't finalised yet. It's due to be finalised for implementation in schools by the next academic year. So at the moment, they haven't experienced this as learners, and they will then be expected to teach this new integrated model or integrated curriculum when they're in schools in their future career. And again, it is nice to see that in the policies in Ireland that have informed the development of this new curriculum, it has looked at integrated STEM from early childhood, primary to secondary to third level education. But it is important that we look at the unique difference from a primary teacher perspective, in that the primary teachers are generally classroom teachers, so they're generalists. So they teach, as I said already, 12, 13 different subject or curricular areas, whereas a lot of our secondary and third level teachers are subject specialists. So specialists in science or maths, or even within science, they might be specialising in whichever domain as well. So it is creating an additional challenge for our primary teachers. So just looking at where primary science has been in Ireland and where it's moving towards, the curriculum that's in place in the moment in primary schools was developed in 1999, so just over 25 years old. And previously, or well, up until now, science was within the curricular area of social, environmental and scientific education. So science was in the curricular area with history and geography. So again, this linked quite nicely with a lot of the biological and the living things strand of our science curriculum. And you can see here now where science is moving towards a new curricular area, which is science, technology, engineering and maths. So the STEM curricular area. So one of the curricula is the science, technology and engineering, and maths as a core discipline has its own individual curriculum in the primary school curriculum. And again, it's important to note that a lot of the strands that are in the current curriculum looks at living things, materials, energy, forces. And it also included the nature of science, which I think in many ways the curriculum before 2000 was very much ahead of its time. It promotes a lot of constructivist teaching approach, it's very child-centered, and it promotes inquiry-based learning. So a lot of the core essence of that science curriculum will be included in the new curriculum that's coming into schools. But the challenge will more so be for teachers to integrate it with the technology and education. Up until now, technology and education haven't been explicit curricular areas in primary education in Ireland. So that will be a new challenge for our primary teachers. And it's important to note that up until now, it's not as if STEM hasn't been taught in primary schools. There are lots of really enthusiastic teachers, and I'm going to share some research that we've worked with them, and a lot of teachers are embracing and teaching STEM in Irish primary schools and doing a really nice job. But up until now, their participation has been voluntary, and very often the teachers that are more enthusiastic about it are the teachers that have been doing it. So now the challenge will be to try and support all teachers in this more integrated approach to teaching our science and STEM curriculum. And before I just move into looking at STEM, and I suppose this is where what drives my concern for this research is there already over the last 20 years, there's been identified a lot of challenges in how science is being taught in primary schools in Ireland. And as a teacher educator, much of my research has looked at the pre-service teachers and their challenge with conceptual knowledge and pedagogical knowledge. So many of the pre-service teachers may not have studied science at upper level in their secondary school study. About 60–70% may have studied biology to upper secondary level, but it's usually about 13–15% might have studied physics or chemistry in secondary level. So therefore, they're coming into third level with us, and many of them really lack confidence. And when I'm teaching them, I'm just really trying to just make it a comfortable, relaxed space that they don't have to feel anxious about their own lack of science content knowledge, because this is what sometimes inhibits and then impedes on their pedagogical approaches when they are teaching science. And then also the in-service teachers, many of them, while they have developed a lot of expertise in their pedagogical approaches, very often they rely on good pedagogical approaches in their teaching of science. And while some inquiry-based hands-on science is happening in primary classrooms, even though it's hands-on and inquiry, it still might be a prescriptive type investigation that pupils are doing. So while they're hands-on and they're engaging in it, it still is quite teacher-led. And the research has shown that sometimes teachers fall back on a more teacher-led method of teaching when they have when their own conceptual knowledge is lacking. So again, there's both factors that are at play there together. And then that does in turn lead to more of a reliance on textbooks or more prescriptive type approach. And again, I just really want to emphasize that the teachers are really well versed and really do a lot of constructivist, inquiry-based, project-based learning approaches, and they do try to integrate them into their science, but sometimes it does fall back towards more traditional approaches. So again, just wanted to share some of the concerns about how science is currently being taught and some of the concerns that our teachers have, and then looking at those and how we can look at those challenges and maybe see if some of our challenges with science could become opportunities when we kind of go to embrace to introducing this new curriculum of the science, technology and engineering integrated together. So firstly, looking at the potential risks that, with STEMifying science. Personally, I suppose as a science educator and having been a secondary school chemistry and science teacher, there is a concern that the core disciplines may become lost if we look at the broader perspective of integrated STEM. That biology, chemistry, physics, that the core nature of a lot of our disciplines may be lost when we have a broader problem-based, contextual, project-based approach to teaching an integrated subject. Again, that's notwithstanding the benefits of having a broader perspective, because that's obviously how we solve problems in real life, is integrating learning from all of them. But it's important to recognise that this really requires a high level of metacognition to recognise what concepts you're taking from each of these subjects in addressing and kind of taking part in a project-based kind of problem-based learning. And again, while primary teachers, as I said, are very well equipped and with project-based learning and constructivist approaches, and students are very often hands-on, active in the primary classroom, it's important to also think on, well, what will they be thinking on? Where are their minds? Are students able to make the explicit links to what concepts they're developing in today's lesson? And you know, we can't expect primary pupils to be able to do that, so we need to scaffold our teachers and our educators and to make those explicit links available for the students to help their learning. So again, having looked at some of the risks, I think it's more important to look at the opportunities and how we can take this time of curricular change as an opportunity to support our pre-service and our in-service teachers, and then in the long term support our learners in their experience of STEM. So again, really primary school teachers are really the gatekeepers for STEM, because much research has shown that, you know, it's by the age 10 or 12 students have developed their own perceptions about science or STEM. So primary school is a real fertile ground for engaging students in STEM and learning them to see the applications of it in their everyday life. And our primary school teachers are really well equipped in constructivist, inquiry, child-centered pedagogies. So therefore, they're very well able to do the type of pedagogies that are advocated in a lot of science curricula. And again, perhaps integrating technology and engineering with science could help to broaden the accessibility of science. because again, some of our previous research has shown that some students perceive science as an elitist subject, that it's not for everyone, but by integrating it or making it more project-based or introducing some contextual examples, which we do in science as its own discipline, but that helps to broaden what counts as science, and perhaps students could see the relevance of it in their own lives, that it mightn't be an explicit science connection, but by broadening the technology and engineering elements, it could help engage more learners in science and help contribute to the subject in that sense. As I've already mentioned, the primary school classroom is already a really nice environment in terms of the constructivist and the learner-centred pedagogies that really are fruitful in STEM education. And then, while I've mentioned the primary teachers may have a disadvantage in being generalists and teaching all subjects, it does also give them some sense of agency as distinct from secondary teachers who are in silos. Well, I don't mean in silos, but very often teaching their own subject for their own external examinations and assessments. At primary education, we've no formal external examination. So while teachers have a broad curriculum to implement, there's more agency within the classroom in terms of timetabling and scheduling, and where you could give time to integrated projects and where you could link it with prior knowledge and what you might do in science or maths and integrating it into a more integrated type project as well. So really there are really nice opportunities if we can look at how we can just engage our pre-service teachers and in-service teachers in implementing these in the primary classroom. So I'm just going to share some research and some insight from teachers. We've worked with a group of teachers in an education centre close by to the university, and some of the work was part of a larger Erasmus project that looked at STEAMing education. So it looked at, first of all, we looked at teachers' perceptions of teaching science and STEM, and then we developed a professional development programme with them, a longitudinal programme, and then looked at their experience and how their engagement in the longitudinal programme helped support their self-efficacy in teaching science and their efficacy in teaching STEM in the primary classroom. So you can see here, this was just some of the teachers' perceptions of what STEM is. And you can see here a lot of them straight away, this was before the professional development programme, we're looking at the pedagogical approach, and they really recognising the value of STEM as an integrated subject and looking at the skills that are beneficial there, the communication, the language, collaboration, organisation. And again, just the quote there that refers to, it's not another new subject. To me, it's a way of thinking, just a reference there to a 12th subject, that rather than, because I think it's been alluded to in previous presentations, that teachers are so busy, their curriculums, they are loaded, and there's so many other interventions coming into schools that, you know, time is obviously a challenge that comes up in anything that we are working on with teachers. So rather than looking at STE or integrated STEM as another thing to add on, that perhaps it could be integrated within our teaching of the other subjects, and that's what the teachers have appreciated and what they have recognised. However, having said that, they did recognise that there is some concern about where will we teach the actual core concepts, like the actual learning outcomes that are outlined in the primary science curriculum. Will we have to teach this disciplinary knowledge separate before we engage in an integrated STEM project? Because if we just jump straight into our integrated project, some of the core disciplinary learning may be lost. And again, this opened up a broader discussion in terms of what type of STEM integration is feasible, and perhaps it isn't going to be transdisciplinary STEM all of the time, that it may be interdisciplinary or multidisciplinary type models may be more realistic in the primary classroom, working towards one more transdisciplinary type STEM project, maybe once per term or something, to be more realistic about it as opposed to in every week's lesson. So just to give an overview then of the professional development programme that we developed with the teachers. So it was a longitudinal programme. It ran over 3 academic years, so 3 school years, and it was specifically designed and informed by a lot of the characteristics of effective professional development that have been identified in other literature. So it did work on peer collaboration and developing a support network. So in total, 60 teachers took part in the professional development programme. In the data that I'm sharing in a moment, it was just 17 teachers completed the pre and post surveys and the teacher interviews with us. So there certainly, we did develop social networks with some teachers. In some schools, 2 or 3 teachers attended it, so that gave them some peer collaboration. And some schools, teachers attended on their own, they were part of a network working with others. Again, it was needs-led, and you'll see in a moment, We had planned it as a STEM professional development program, but the teachers immediately made known their concern and their anxiety and their low efficacy in teaching primary science. So actually the model was changed to include the first year really focused on professional development in science education to give them a good grounding before we moved into the STEM education. A lot of the STEM workshops, the professional development facilitator modeled what a STEM lesson would look like, or what a science lesson would look like, and also visited the schools and helped do some peer teaching and feedback, constructive feedback to the teachers when they were beginning to teach STEM for the first time in their own classrooms. As I mentioned already, it was a longitudinal intervention program, which really did help to kind of contribute to the positive gains that the teachers had from it. It was situated in the teachers' own schools, so the workshops were in the different schools as well as in the education centre, and the professional development facilitator visited the teachers and observed and gave feedback in their own classrooms as well. So really it was very collaborative, and there was a lot of support for the teachers, and it was a longitudinal professional development programme. So this here just gives you an overview of the 3 phases of the programme across 3 academic years. So there were 8 workshops each year, and in each of the workshops, the professional development facilitator really focused on simple, hands-on, like really low-tech type resources. A lot of the resources that we use in the integrated STEM and in the science workshops were like things you could pick out of the recycling bin. So it wasn't anything daunting for the teachers. And as you can see here, the first year actually focused solely on professional development in science education. So the teachers would come and attend the workshops where the facilitator modelled and taught science, and then in year 2 and 3 integrated STEM lessons, and the teachers themselves participated as STEM learners. So this gave them a space that they were free and comfortable to share, where they may have lacked some conceptual knowledge themselves, experience science and STEM as a learner. And then in the first year or 2, they took the lessons that they experienced as a learner and implemented them in their own classrooms. And then by year 3, it was kind of a gradual release of responsibility model that we used. So by year 3, the teachers then, rather than just taking and replicating the science or STEM lessons that they took part in, they developed their own STEM lessons. And then they came back in the workshops, and the workshops were teacher-led, where the teachers shared in a peer teach type structure the lessons that they had developed and taught in their own lessons. So it definitely was structured in a way to try develop, enable and support teacher efficacy, firstly in STEM, which had to be grounded their efficacy then in, or firstly in science, to develop their efficacy in STEM education. So as I said, there were 60 teachers across 3 school years as a longitudinal study. And the workshops were kind of about 2-hour workshops, 8 of them throughout the year. And teachers were released from school for time to attend those workshops, which was an important facet for the kind of success or the impact of this professional development process. Okay, so then in assessing the programme, we looked at how the programme helped contribute to the teachers' self-efficacy in STEM education. So Bandura defines self-efficacy as one's belief in your ability to produce a desired outcome. Okay, so again, these are the 4 elements of self-efficacy: performance accomplishment, which really refers to mastery of experiences as a learner or as a teacher of STEM; vicarious experiences, which refers to experiencing STEM. So experiencing STEM in a positive way as a learner was a really important factor for these teachers. And verbal persuasion refers to where the teachers received feedback, like constructive feedback, from the professional development facilitator when he visited and co-taught with them, and also from their peers. And then the emotional arousal refers to where when the teachers were excited about teaching STEM, this obviously increased their efficacy in their teaching of STEM. And again, just in these slides here, I just have some examples. I won't have time to read through the actual quotes here from the teachers, but we can see in terms of performance accomplishment in our data analysis, we looked at evidence from mastery of STEM as a learner and mastery of STEM as a teacher. Students' insight to that, looking at emotional arousal, so looking at the psychological arousal, having that opportunity to engage in STEM as a learner, and also for many of the teachers, when they saw the excitement of their pupils, this made them more enthusiastic and committed to teaching STEM in their classrooms. And the teachers would say students were waiting for them to come back from the workshops. What did you learn? What are we going to be learning next about STEM? So the students were really driving the teachers' motivation. Again, the vicarious experiences, again, because it was a 3-year model over 3 phases, they did have time to experience science and STEM with the collaborative group of teachers, and also was very much positioned in their own classroom. So they had that positive experience, and it was linking back to their own school implementation all of the time. And then finally, looking at the verbal persuasion, again, you know, I have to acknowledge the role of the professional development facilitator. He was really a good role model in terms of how he taught STEM, and this really, you can see in a lot of the feedback that this has an impact on the teachers' experience and their perceptions and their positive attitudes that they developed towards STEM. And then in doing that, they developed their own collaborative peer network also. Because it was a longitudinal study, that obviously helped developing that peer network, and that peer network has actually continued since. So just to conclude, because I'm aware I'm getting rushed for time, I just wanted to evidence how this longitudinal professional development programme really, when we looked at supporting teachers' efficacy in STEM, that this has been a really core and important learning point as we look at the challenge now of, well, in my part, kind of preparing our pre-service teachers and in-service teachers for a new integrated STE curriculum in Ireland, that perhaps if we can help support their efficacy in STEM and their teaching efficacy, because there isn't enough time within our undergraduate programme to develop all of the conceptual and pedagogical knowledge that we would like to, but perhaps by helping them developing their efficacy, this would put them on the right track in terms of their longitudinal professional and their continued development for meaningful engagement and teaching STEM. All right.
Thank you for an interesting talk.